families, Miss McDonald and Mrs Boys here. We just thought we would give you a bit more information about the Year 6 Stats which are upcoming next week. Obviously it's a big week for the children, it's assessing all they've learned in Key Stage 2. So STAT stands for the Standardised Assessment Test, and they go over the duration of a week. So they are from Monday to Thursday. Monday the children will be doing their spelling, punctuation and grammar test. Tuesday will be their reading. Wednesday is a very busy day for them as they will have 2 tests, the arithmetic and reasoning 1, and then Thursday it will be their reasoning 2 paper.
Okay, so attendance is obviously crucial throughout that whole week. It's really, really important that your children are here and that they are punctual to school on those days. We will be offering breakfast from 8 AM. Breakfast will be provided. It's a really nice, calm atmosphere for the children to come into with their friends before they split off into their SATs groups. We just want to stress, if they don't come in on those days of the set papers across the country, the children have to do them on the same day. When your child then returns to school, they would have to do them back to back in isolation. And obviously that is not an experience we want the children to be exposed to, so please ensure your children are attending school across that week. So as Miss McDonald has already touched on, when and how the SAT's completed, she has talked through which ones are covered each day. Now as you can see, the times do vary depending on the paper. So the longer one, for example, is reading for 60 minutes, and then some of the shorter ones, maybe like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. The children obviously cannot talk to each other during the papers, it is in test conditions. We will have them on opposite ends of the table so that we are ensuring that there is no cheating or anything like that going on. The results will then be sent to us in July, so it has to be done in quite a formalised process that then in your children's reports you will get their score come through on that. Okay, so spelling, punctuation and grammar is on the Monday. Okay, so the spelling, punctuation and grammar consists of 2 papers. So you have the first paper, which is solely just questions, all 1 mark each, 50 marks in total available for that paper. You then have a spelling paper which follows that, which consists of 20 spellings, all 1 mark each again. So in total, they would be added together, which would combine for 70 marks. Each year, the grade boundaries change slightly because it's done on an average across how the schools do in the country. Usually it's about 35, 36 for expected, and then 55 for greater depth. So you can get expected by just getting your marks in the paper 1 if your child is not very confident with spelling, but ideally they'd be getting maybe a handful across both. So the paper 1 goes through some of the things identified here. So key things are like the word classes, functions of sentences, word phrases and clauses, and punctuation is another big one. So some of them will require just tick box answers, some of them will require them to actually write in the answer. The important thing is it is actually assessing their spelling, punctuation throughout the whole paper, so anything they write must be spelled correctly and obviously be readable. So here are some examples of some questions. So it could just be an example of one saying tick which sentence must end with a question mark. And they obviously do not include the question mark within the sentences because they make it really obvious. So they would obviously tick 1 of the options. There are somewhere you may have to just insert a word, and then somewhere you're having to do more of an explanation about how the meaning has changed. So for example, in this one, it's gone from there being Jake Thomas being just 1 person with Lily, to then being Jake, Thomas and Lily. So they would do an explanation about how it changes from the 2 people to the 3 people. So paper 2, as I said, is a spelling paper. So myself and Miss Roper will be in each of the testing rooms. We will read the test script to them. They will have a sentence that looks like this, and then they will fill in the gap with the word. We do stress to the children, if their handwriting is scruffy, to make sure that it is very neat, so that it is readable, because if they cannot distinguish what letter it is, they automatically will not get the mark. We do also advise sometimes if it is a bit of a struggle in terms of joining, that they do not join, and make sure that every letter is formed accurately, remembering to cross their T's, dot their I's, so that it's really clear what word they are putting in the gap. So this is just a bit of an analysis across the papers from 2016 all the way to 2023. Now, as you can see, majority of the marks come from G1 and then G5. So it's grammatical terms and word classes. So those are things like your adjectives, nouns, verbs, knowing what that terminology means, because although we can read every question to them in the grammar paper, we cannot explain the meaning of them. And then also punctuation, so that's making sure that they know what the punctuation is if it says insert a bracket, so making sure that they insert the right one, and also ensuring that they understand how it should be applied. Again, these are just some examples. So across the spelling paper, actually majority of the spellings come from year 3 and 4, ironically, because really they're expected to remember all the way up to year 6 what they've covered the whole of Key Stage 2. So we have revised a lot of these spelling rules, so they should be familiar with them and hopefully remember them. So again, some more 3, 4, and then quite a short handful of just 5, 6 spellings. So then on the Tuesday, we're on to the reading paper. So what this consists of is the children have a reading answer booklet and then they have a text booklet. So within the text booklet, they will have 3 texts that within that hour they will read and answer questions about the text. It will cover a lot of domains, so we do cover a range of these throughout the year, so they should be very, very familiar with pacing themselves throughout the paper and ensuring that they can get all the way through, hopefully to the end of the paper by the end of the 60 minutes. So what we tell the children to look out for is this little bar at the top. It will tell them which text they need to be looking at in order to answer the questions. So some examples of questions may be that it's literally just asking them a simple retrieval question. The children will be allowed highlighters in the text. So for example, if this was their text, they could simply highlight and then copy their answer in. And then that would be an example of a mark scheme. Then here we have got a further question. So again, it's more reading the text and thinking about how they think that text might be showing that it is useful. And again, multiple answers that they could have given for that style of question. So then we get on to the 3-mark questions, which we've all absolutely been revising non-stop for 3-mark questions, because actually, although they seem like they're a lot of work, they are really, really quick wins for children to get easy marks. So for example, here it's asking them to fill in their impression and then their evidence from the text. So they will read the text, find their impression. So it could be that they think Piper's house is a bit mysterious. They might say mysterious. Then they would back up that with evidence from the text. They can literally get 2 marks by literally just making 2 points there without the evidence. So even if they're running out of time, we're encouraging the children to just get their points in. And then if they can quickly back it up with evidence, then to do so. And again, there's usually multiple options that the children can have in terms of what they could have as their possible answers. Again, here's some analysis. So majority of marks for reading come from 2B and 2D, which is retrieval and then inference. So they are the main domain dogs that we cover throughout the year. We do have a handful that come from vocab sort of work, so that's understanding the meaning of words, where it might ask them a synonym of the word, what is the closest in meaning to this. But main ones are that idea of retrieval from the text or inferring, so reading into what they think it might be showing. So we have looked at this with the children about how the word count has differed from year to year. Now, as you can see, the comparison between the 2022 paper and the 2023 was quite a big jump of about 500 words, with the total words actually covered within the paper. As it goes through from the text 1, 2 and 3, it does get progressively more difficult. But as you can see, in comparison to the previous years, the paper 2 last year was quite a significant amount of text that they had to read within that time. We have broken down the paper and done it with the children step by step, and they did find that quite a supportive process to see that they can do it. But it's just to bear in mind that potentially the word count may be similar or may increase going from last year's paper. So that's just, again, some information. We are expecting maybe poetry. We do not see the papers until your children see the papers, so they have to be in sealed bags until that moment. We haven't had poetry for quite some time, so we are anticipating that potentially there could be a poem this year, but we did think that last year and then there wasn't. Again, this is just some information about how they compare. Okay.
So on the 15th and 16th of May, the children will be starting their maths paper. On the 15th of May, the children will be starting with the arithmetic. They also have got reasoning 1 and reasoning 2. The amount of marks on each paper differs, so arithmetic is worth 40 marks, but they actually have the least amount of time to do that paper of 30 minutes. Then reasoning 2, they've got 40 minutes and 40 minutes on reasoning 3. There are only 35 marks available on each of the reasoning papers. So in total, we're looking at 110 marks across all 3 papers. I think obviously the mark scheme changes each year with the grade boundaries, but we tell the children to aim for about 60 marks for expected and about 95 marks for greater depth. So those children who are looking to get greater depth, they can only really afford to drop about 15 marks. So the arithmetic paper tests the fluency of the children's math skills. So that's all your 4 operations and your fractions, decimals and percentages. We really encourage the children to try and pace themselves to get through those questions really quickly. I'd say the first 10 marks are really quite straightforward, testing the children's knowledge of things they've done earlier in Key Stage 2, and then it gets progressively harder throughout the test. The maximum marks available though is 2 marks, and you'll only get those for your long multiplication or long division questions. So here's an example of a long multiplication question, one of the 2-mark questions. It is very important on these questions that you're encouraging the children to make sure they're getting in that placeholder, because you can get 1 mark just for doing that, whereas if they don't put that placeholder in, they won't get 1. So again, here it says some other questions you can get, so it's just testing the basic fluency of the addition with decimals, subtraction. Sometimes it's the children can get thrown off by the answer box being at the wrong side of the question, so it's just getting the children used to answering all different styles of questions. Here we've got a BODMAS question, so it's ensuring that the children are following the processes of what order to answer the questions and the percentages. So here is the other style of 2-mark question that you can get. It is the long division question. We have done a lot of long division in school because it's something that children generally tend to find quite difficult, but hopefully they will be confident when we go to the test. And then we've got the reasoning paper. So the reasoning takes place on Wednesday and Thursday, and both total of 35 marks. So this does still include questions on their fluency, but it will also bring in other things like ratio, measurement, geometry, 4 operations. So example questions are the more wordy questions. The children have to kind of read and try and figure out what sums is asking them to do based on the wording rather than the symbols. So Jack pours some dark paint into a container. In litres, how much paint is in the container? So they're having to read that and kind of apply their knowledge just from the measurement and from their 4 operations to kind of get to that answer. Here it's a sequencing question, so this is more to do with algebra. Children to look, for the next step and the one before. They need to find the rule to ensure that they're able to get there. So, circle the prime number. In this case, it's just kind of asking what is the definition for a prime number. So, they need to be able to work out that actually which one is only divisible by 1 in itself, and then they need to make sure that they're writing that below to show that they understand what a prime number is. So we've got this pictogram shows the number of satellites above Earth in 2016, how many satellites were above the Earth in 2016. So it's using that idea of quarters, so their fractions would come into this, but it's also looking for that rule again in sequencing. And again, this one is their measurements, so the children are expected to memorise the conversion really between the measurements. We have done this a lot in school, but these generally don't take up a lot of marks. So the highest amount of marks you can get on a reasoning paper is 3 marks. It's normally because they include the last step of rounding or something like that, but we do encourage the children to attempt these because it's really quite easy to pick up 1 or 2 marks on this. It's just showing that they understand the basic operations and that they can pull the information out of the text to do the sums. So here is just an analysis of what comes up each year. As you can see, most things that do come up and the things we do revise a lot in school is calculations, that's your 4 operations, and your fractional decimals and percentages, because they come up on every single paper. We do get other marks on other areas, but some of them you're only looking at a couple of marks, so I would say if you want your children to revise at home, please get them to focus on calculations, fractions, decimals and percentages. So these are things that have come up over the years, just to show more of the visual representation. I think previously you have had some questions where the topics that haven't come up at all. I think Roman numerals is one, but that just might mean that it's more likely to come up this year, but again, it will only be 1 or 2 marks available. So again, that push on for operations, fraction, decimal percentages should get your child to expected if they can do that really quite fluently.
Okay, so just some advice for your Year 6 children. So first thing, please promote this idea that they need to be listening to us throughout that week. We obviously want the best for them during that time, and obviously this is stipulated by the government, so the children do have to sit them. The adults you work with obviously want the best for you, so that's advice for them. Get plenty of sleep and rest, because the last thing we want is very grumpy children, particularly on that long day on the Wednesday when we're testing all day. And just to advise them to read the questions carefully and avoid silly mistakes. So apart from the reading paper, the rest of them, they can put their hand up and ask for the questions to be read. So we're trying to get in the habit of getting them to be, doing this for those that are less confident with reading, particularly like for that grammar, punctuation and spelling. Maths, again, we just can't read the symbols. Advising them that they don't need to panic. So there may be questions that they cannot answer. We usually advise them just to circle the number and then they can come back to it. But they can always move on, come back to it later, or even just attempt it. We've tried to be strategic with the children and say, when we're saying 1 minute to go, trying to go through that paper and get the last ticks in, if there's any tick boxes that they can do. And just remember that they last for 4 days, that is it, 4 days. And it's been all this hard work throughout their whole journey at Park Lane, and it will be done by next Thursday. So what do we need from you as parents? We need you to be ensuring your children are in school. As I stated, we have got breakfast club available for the children, so do please encourage your children to be attending from 8 AM from Monday to Thursday, to ensure that they can have some nice breakfast, have a calm environment. Before then, obviously they have their lovely treat day after their hard work on the Friday.
So obviously as soon as the 4 days are done is when all the exciting things start to happen for the children in Year 6. So we start off with Thought Park. So as a reward for the children coming in every single day for their SATs and attending all of the papers, we take them off to Thought Park. It is a really exciting day, and I think every single year we've done it, I think they've really, really enjoyed it and loved it. And then following on from that, the children can start looking forward to their PGL trip in the late summer. So we will be going to the Isle of Wight. There will be a video coming out with more details on that close to the time. But again, it's just such a lovely weekend for the children. They generally get to experience things they probably wouldn't normally do. And I think it's that last big trip they can do with the children in their year group before they all go off to different secondary schools.
So as always, thank you for your time watching our very lengthy video. If you do have any questions, do just get in touch with any of the Year 6 team. We will be happy to discuss whether you've got queries about how SATS runs, anything to do with Thought Park, PGL, etc. But please, can I just leave as a final message, your children have worked really, really hard. We're really proud of them. Please encourage them to come in 8 AM next week, and thank you very much for your support.